Story 1. So, my family and I had fallen behind on our homeowners association dues. We owed about $2,000, which I know isn't great, but times have been tough. The HOA decided to take us to court over it. The court date was set for last month, but I had just started a new job the week before. I figured I'd skip the court date and let the judge rule in favor of the HOA. I thought they'd just garnish my wages like other creditors had done in the past. No big deal, right? Boy, was I wrong. What I didn't know was that the HOA's lawyer asked the judge for a continuance and to issue a warrant for my arrest. Yeah, you heard that right, an arrest warrant for unpaid HOA dues. Ridiculous, I know. Anyway, I had no clue about any of this. I was working my butt off at the new job, trying to catch up on bills. Yesterday, I came home exhausted after a long day. I went to bed early, around 9:30 p.m. I had barely closed my eyes when I heard loud banging on our front door. Me, who the hell is that at this hour? My wife, I don't know. It sounds like the police. I got up, confused and groggy. When I opened the door, there were 2 police officers standing there. Officer 1, sir, we have a warrant for your arrest. Please step outside. Me, what? There must be some mistake. I haven't done anything. Officer 2, sir, we need you to come with us. Turn around and put your hands behind your back. I was in shock. They wouldn't tell me why they were arresting me. My wife was crying, the kids were scared, and even our dogs were going crazy. It was a nightmare. They put me in handcuffs and took me to jail like I was some kind of criminal. At the jail, they put me in a holding cell for a while. Then 2 officers, including one of the guys who arrested me and an older cop, took me to a small room. Me, can someone please tell me why I'm here? Older officer, you mean you don't know? Me, no, I have no idea. The only legal trouble I've had recently was a speeding ticket, which I paid, and my homeowners association trying to get a judgment for unpaid dues. Arresting officer, that can't be it. We don't arrest people for unpaid bills. They looked at each other, confused. A few minutes later, they got a fax from the magistrate's office. Turns out, the warrant was issued because of the HOA lawyer's request. The cops were as surprised as I was. Older officer, in all my years, I've never seen anyone arrested for something like this. They took me to talk to the magistrate over some video call system. Magistrate, you're being charged with failure to appear in court. We're setting a new court date for that charge, and another for the unpaid HOA dues. You're free to go for now. Me, thank you. Can I get a ride home? Arresting officer, sorry, we can't do that. You'll have to find your own way. So there I was, released in the middle of the night, 25 miles from home. What a mess. I thought that was the end of it, but nope. The craziness continued. About a week later, I'm at home minding my own business when I hear that dreaded knock on the door again. I open it, and there are 2 different cops standing there. Officer 3, sir, we have a warrant for your arrest. Me, what? No. This can't be happening again. You guys already arrested me last week for this. Officer 4, we don't have any record of that. Sir, you need to come with us. My heart was racing. I couldn't believe this was happening twice. Luckily, I had kept all the paperwork from my previous arrest right by the front door. Me, look, I have proof right here. See? This shows I was already arrested and released for this exact same thing last week. The officers looked skeptical at first, but after examining the papers, they finally believed me. Officer 3, well, it looks like there's been some kind of mix-up. We'll have to sort this out back at the station. Me, so? You're not arresting me again? Officer 4, not today. But you should probably call the court to straighten this out. They left, and I collapsed on the couch, relieved but angry. How could the system be so messed up? Getting arrested once for unpaid HOA dues was bad enough, but twice. It's insane. Now I'm stuck dealing with court dates, legal fees, and the stress of possibly being arrested again if someone else messes up the paperwork. All because we fell behind on some condo fees. I get that we owed the money, but treating us like criminals over it seems way over the top. I don't know how this is all going to turn out, but one thing's for sure, I'm never going to look at those Hoa-doos the same way again. Who knew ignoring a bill could lead to all this drama? Story 2. A few months ago, I met one of the most influential tour managers for some of the biggest music artists, whom I'll call Bill. We were introduced through Chad, an event promoter who had messed up on hospitality with a very important person artist and asked me to step in and fix it since I work in luxury hospitality. I agreed to help and asked for nothing in return. This wasn't the first time I had vouched for Chad when an artist was upset with his mistakes. I've always had a crush on Chad, but he pays me no attention. I've never asked to be on the guest list because I want to support Chad's business and promotions company. I've been a loyal supporter for years. Bill and I ended up getting along fabulously and have become good friends. Bill even told me I had a guest list for life. I noticed a show coming up by Chad's company, and Bill mentioned he knew the artist's manager and could get my friend and me on the list. It was perfect timing since I had waited to get cheaper tier tickets, and I couldn't stay all night. I was assured that I was on the list and even saw screenshots confirming it. However, when I arrived at the venue, I found out I wasn't on the list. I asked the staff to reach out to Chad because Bill was in another time zone in another country, and I couldn't call him. I called Chad and his second in command, who is my usual point of contact. Neither of them answered. In the end, I had to pay for tickets for both me and my friend, in addition to $40 for parking, totaling $100. When I told Bill the next day, he was furious. I never heard anything back from Chad. His second in command told me the next day that I was indeed on the list, but they didn't receive it until after I had arrived. I explained how much I had to spend on a night that was supposed to only cost parking, and he responded, "We lost money on that show, and you expect your money back?" When I told Bill about this, he was even more livid. He promised to deal with them. The next show by Chad was for one of the biggest artists in the music genre, who also happened to be Bill's client. Bill decided to visit me for a few days before the show and let Chad know that 3 of my friends and I were to be very important person guests. Chad expressed that he was uncomfortable with that many people backstage, but Bill, very politely, made it clear that he was in charge of the guest list for the artist. Needless to say, there were no problems getting in this time. I literally rolled in with the artist team. It was a fabulous night. Bill gave Chad a stern talking to about how I had been treated and insisted that I be treated like one of his artists from then on. This show took place in November, and the artist was preparing for one of his biggest shows ever in another country this month. I convinced Chad to get his passport and come to that country for the show. Bill put him on the most basic guest list with average tickets and told me that Chad needed a wake-up call. Bill would get him backstage, but only after Chad came and said hello and thank you. Neither Bill nor I had heard from Chad since November, and suddenly he was posting on social media, making it seem like he had been invited to the show because of his own awesomeness, rather than because I had asked for him to be given the invite. Chad sent me a sad face emoji about the lack of very important person access once at the show. I sent a sad face emoji back and told him to come find me and say hello. I had backstage passes for him and his friends, but I didn't tell him. He never came to say hi to me or Bill. There was no thank you for getting him in for free, and he even left early. I thought to myself, maybe I should offer him some water. He seems a bit salty. Story 3. This story I'm about to share happened around 15 years ago, back when I was working as a firefighter investigator in an independent department. Just to give you some context, I was a lieutenant, and I was stationed at a pretty large firehouse with 2 fire engines, a newer 110-tower ladder truck, a chief's car, and a utility truck. We had a close-knit group of firefighters, and each day, one of us was responsible for cooking. My friend Bob had a job as the general manager of a small grocery store. In front of his store, there was a space marked "Emergency Vehicles Only." It was reserved for fire trucks and other emergency vehicles, of course. This story revolves around an entitled jerk who thought he could park his fancy BMW in that spot every week without consequences. One day, Bob confronted this entitled jerk and told him that he couldn't park there. The response he got was far from pleasant. The jerk replied, "I can park wherever I want. I make more in a day than you make in a week." Understandably, Bob was pretty upset about this encounter, so he called me to complain. Since we were good friends, I decided to do something about it. I hopped into our utility truck, which had the department decals on the door and a single red light on the dashboard, and I parked in the emergency vehicles only spot. As I was walking into the store, I heard the entitled jerk shouting, "You can't park there, it's my special spot." I turned to look at him and calmly explained, "Excuse me, but I'm on official duty and can park there." I pointed at the department decal on the truck door. However, he continued to be belligerent, saying, "You can't be a firefighter, you're a girl. Move your truck and leave, you C-word." This infuriated me. I was proud of my job, and it was disheartening to encounter such a sexist and disrespectful individual. Without a word, I walked into Bob's office to get more information about his ongoing issue with the entitled jerk. As Bob explained the continuous parking violations and his troubles with this guy, I noticed a small notice on the fire suppression system sprinklers indicating that the inspection was coming up. An idea started forming in my head. Here's where the revenge plot unfolds. I collected some information, left Bob's office, and headed back to the fire station. When I arrived, I went straight to my chief's office and told him about the entitled jerk and his behavior. My chief, a towering 6'6" 320-pound Samoan man who saw all of us as family, listened intently. As I explained my plan to him, he got a gleam in his eye and readily agreed to it. He rushed out and called for a station meeting, where I detailed my idea. We decided to send a fire engine and the old truck to the store the next time the entitled jerk parked in the fire lane. Fast forward 2 weeks. Bob called the fire station, informing us that the entitled jerk had just parked in the emergency spot again. As I thanked him, I heard the fire alarm go off in the background. I knew this was our chance. I changed into my investigator uniform with turnout gear, informed my chief, and sent the trucks out. I hopped into the Quint, a type of fire apparatus, and we raced to the store. When we arrived, I spotted the entitled jerk's car right in the emergency vehicle spot. I quickly radioed for one of the engines to pull up right in front of his car, and the truck parked right beside the driver's side door. As I got out of the Quint, the engineer started setting up the ladder, and one of the support struts crushed the front of the entitled jerk's hood. The alarm in the store continued to blare. I went inside to find Bob evacuating the store as the alarm rang loudly. The entitled jerk, after realizing what was happening, came running out of the store. He spotted his precious car and lost his temper. I radioed the police dispatch to request a few officers to the store, as there was a man impeding a fire operation. The dispatcher assured me they would send some officers to assist. 3 officers arrived, and I asked them to follow me. We headed toward the entitled jerk, and when I shouted, "Hey, leave my firefighters alone," he turned to see me. He rushed up to me, screaming that he'd make me pay for damaging his precious baby, his car. I stopped him and calmly warned that if he didn't leave, he would be arrested. He got right in my face, saying, "You did this. I'll have your job for this." He then pushed me back. At that moment, the officers and I rushed in, tackling the entitled jerk to the ground and handcuffing him. After he was subdued, I informed him that he was under arrest for assault and interfering with a fire investigation, and that his car would be towed for parking in a fire lane. It was later discovered that the car had been crushed by the ladder strut. The entitled jerk received 12 months of probation for assaulting me and interfering with a fire operation, as well as a $500 fine for his illegal parking, the cost of the tow, and he lost his precious BMW. The moral of this story is simple. Don't park where you shouldn't, or bad things will happen. In this case, it led to the entitled jerk's humiliation and the loss of his luxury car. Parking rules are in place for a reason, and everyone should follow them, regardless of their entitlement or gender. Story 4. So, my family moved around a lot when I was a kid. When I was 8, we ended up in Japan, and we stayed there for 4 years. Now, I didn't know it at the time, but I was actually autistic. My parents were old school and didn't believe in all that mental health stuff, so I just had to figure things out on my own. Being different made school really tough. The other kids thought I was weird and bullied me a lot. I had a hard time making friends my own age, so I mostly hung out with adults like librarians, school staff, and coaches. There was this girl who lived near me, a year older than me. We'd hang out sometimes because, well, there weren't many other options. One day, we went for a walk in this wooded area near my house. She lived in an apartment building nearby, which is important to remember for later. During our walk, she started picking on me. It wasn't the first time, but I was never good at telling when someone was being mean. I always thought they were just joking around. But this time, she got really nasty. "Girl, you're such a weirdo. No wonder nobody likes you." "Me? What? I thought we were friends." "Girl, friends. Ha! I only hang out with you because I feel sorry for you." She kept going, saying more and more hurtful things. I started crying, which only made her laugh harder. I didn't know how to stand up for myself, so I just walked away and went home. But I was really angry and upset. I wanted to get back at her somehow. That's when I remembered her bike. She had this new bike that she always parked in front of her apartment building. There was also a big dumpster behind the building. I think you can see where this is going. I waited at home for about an hour, trying to calm down, but I couldn't shake off how mad I was. So, I decided to do something about it. I walked over to her building. It was only about 5 minutes away. Sure enough, there was her shiny new bike, just sitting there in the open. Now, I was a pretty big kid for my age, tall and strong from sports. Picking up a bike wasn't a problem for me. I looked around to make sure no one was watching. Then I grabbed her bike and carried it around to the back of the building. I opened up the dumpster and shoved the bike in, making sure to bury it under some trash. Then I calmly walked back home, feeling pretty satisfied with myself. A few hours later, there was a knock at our door. It was the girl's parents, and they did not look happy. Turns out, there were security cameras I hadn't noticed. Oops. But here's the thing, by the time they figured out what happened, the trash had already been picked up. That bike was long gone. My parents called me into the room. "Dad, did you throw her bike in the dumpster?" Me, yes, I did. "Mom, why would you do that?" Me, she was really mean to me. She made me cry. The girl's parents looked kind of shocked. I don't think they knew their daughter could be such a bully. Girl's mom, is this true? Have you been bullying this child? The girl just stood there, not saying anything. Her face was all red. My parents turned to me. "Dad, well, that wasn't the right way to handle it. But I gotta say, I'm impressed by your problem-solving skills." "Mom, we'll talk about this later. For now, go to your room." I could tell they were trying not to laugh. To this day, they still think it's hilarious. After that, the girl never bullied me again. I guess she realized I wasn't such an easy target after all. Looking back, I know it wasn't the best way to handle things. I wasn't great with words back then, and I didn't know how to stand up for myself properly. But you know what? A part of me is still pretty proud of 10-year-old me. I saw a problem, and I found a solution. It might not have been the right solution, but it sure was effective. If I could go back in time, knowing what I know now about bullying and how to handle it, I'd probably still do it. I was such a little troublemaker back then. But hey, at least I made sure the bullying stopped, right? Story 5. I'll start by saying my ex is incredibly vindictive. We were fully divorced just before the pandemic started. We sold the house we shared, and I didn't have to pay her alimony because she cheated. And we live in a state where fault matters in divorce. Things got messy from the day the truth came out, with all the stereotypes playing out. First, there were tears and trickle truths like, "I love you," and "it was just one time," which then became, "Okay, it was 2 years." This was followed by gaslighting and threats like, "I'm going to take you for everything." before she packed her things and left. I feel like I never really knew the woman my ex was during all the time we were together. We were married for 5 years and together for 7. In 2 of those 5 married years, she had affairs with 3 other men. The last one was a foreign businessman of some sort, from what I could find out. Yes, I got tested for illnesses and was thankfully negative. Yes, she got pregnant by the last person she had an affair with. And no, I didn't sign the birth certificate because I found out about all the affairs before the baby was born, thanks to a call from the first person she had an affair with. My ex tried to go full scorched earth on me, but because we live in a fault-based state, she lost. We didn't pay equally into our house, so the equity was divided 70/30. I got a pretty good cash payout when I sold our marital home, which I used as a down payment on a different house closer to my job. It's a bit of a downgrade, but it suits a single guy in his 30s like me just fine. My ex did show up at my house once, but I refused to let her in. She complained that I had financially ruined her in the divorce. I replied that if she was fully willing to do that to me first, it was only fair. She had the nerve to say it should have been my life that was messed up, not hers. I laughed and said it was karma. She yelled that she'd sue me for what was rightfully hers. I told her to go ahead and sue me. It would end up the same way in court because she had nothing but a false sob story. She was the cheater, not me. I'm no saint, but I didn't do anything to her, and she was the one who ruined our marriage. Then she said she'd tell everyone that I had abused her. I responded that I'd sue her for defamation if she did, and I had recorded our interaction and saved those words to my phone. She looked shocked, her eyes wide, and her jaw dropped, the expression people call this surprised Pikachu face. I then asked why she was there, if not just to cause trouble since she had a new man in her life who had gotten her pregnant. She just huffed and said he wasn't around much, and she's stuck in a tiny apartment living off his child support until he comes back. It was immature of me, I know, but I pretended to play the world's smallest violin. She yelled at me to go do something unpleasant to myself, and I yelled back that I'd sooner do that than be with her again. She raged at me, and then got in her car to leave. I haven't seen her since. There is a homeowners association in my neighborhood, but I was not legally obligated to join because the last owner of my house was not a member. I made sure of that through a real estate lawyer as well. The homeowners association had no grounds to force me to join, and they were not happy about it. The homeowners association president would show up with forms every week for the first month, demanding I sign them. Then she threatened to take me to court, which led me to get a cease and desist letter sent to her from my lawyer to make her stop. So she started harassing me by looking for any infractions she could possibly report to the city. An inspector came out several times and found nothing wrong. In fact, I offered one of them a burger while grilling, and they graciously accepted. Did I mention the homeowners association hates barbecues and parties that aren't approved in advance? Well, they do, and I like to grill when the weather is good. My neighbors actually love me for it because I invite them over. The police were called on me several times for noise complaints because I was playing music on a Saturday afternoon while having friends over. I caught the homeowners association president trespassing once when she was trying to peer into my windows. I called the police, but she denied ever doing it, so I got cameras. She hasn't trespassed since, but I still received repeated passive-aggressive letters saying my cameras were not an approved addition to my house. A few months ago, I started receiving letters for fines in the mail. When I contacted the homeowners association, their representative claimed they had it on record that I had joined and needed to pay all fees effective immediately. I told them that was not possible. Then they emailed a scanned copy of the forms, and they had a signature on them. But it was not mine. It was similar in some ways, and I recognized right away that it was my ex's handwriting. She knew what my signature looked like, but it was a loose imitation at best. I got in touch with a lawyer right away over the forged signature, but the homeowners association still demanded to go to court. It took 7 months before that happened. Meanwhile, they were stacking unpaid fines against me weekly and threatening to put a lien on my house. We went to court, and the homeowners association president looked very smug. But my lawyer pointed out how the signature wasn't the same as mine and was very inconsistent across the various forms. I had never allowed the homeowners association president into my house, and I had never requested the forms. The foolish homeowners association president actually slammed her palm on the table and said it was still binding. But when pressed on where the fraudulent signature came from, she admitted my ex-wife had called the homeowners association, and they sent her the forms, which were returned in the mail signed. She then claimed she thought I had signed them. The judge looked at her and asked if she was serious. She confirmed she was. The judge then asked how a woman I was no longer married to, who had never even lived with me in my current residence, was supposed to have any bearing on whether or not I joined her homeowners association. She went quiet, and I could see the "oh no" look on her face as she finally mentally put the pieces together. My lawyer then counterclaimed that what the homeowners association did was blatant fraud, and legal actions must be taken, and they were. I countersued the homeowners association for the emotional distress of the harassment I'd received since moving in, for which I had lots of proof. That won me about $10,000 after lawyer fees, which I decided to put towards my mortgage. The homeowners association president was removed from her position. I like to think she was kicking and screaming. She was also slapped with a hefty fine. I've seen her outside a few times, and she always looks at me like I am the devil. The homeowners association itself had to pay all of my legal fees too. I wanted to go after my ex for forging my signature, but couldn't because not long after she forged my signature on those forms, she apparently left the country to be with her third partner. From what I could see of the final post on her social media before she disappeared, she's somewhere in Europe, so I can't do anything against her unless she ever returns to the United States. So that was a wash. I'm not getting letters from the homeowners association anymore, though, and the new president has promised to keep things completely cordial from now on. I still don't feel like I got much of a win in this, though. Other than the $10,000 payout, it all felt like a huge waste of time. Story 6. Hey there, let me tell you about this wild night I had back when I was a rookie cop in the mid-90s. It's not my story, but my buddies will call him Adam. He told me this tale over beers one night, and I've got to say, it's a doozy. So, picture this. It's the dead of winter, middle of February, and our town's been dealing with this firebug for about 3 months. This guy's been setting fires all over the place, and they're getting bigger each time. Needless to say, everyone's on edge. One night, Adam and his partner, let's call him Rick, drew the short straw and had to patrol the area where the firebug had been active. They're cruising around, keeping their eyes peeled, when Adam spots this classic Mercedes pulling up to a house. Out steps this lady in a fur coat, and Adam just groans. Adam, oh no, not her again. Rick, who's that? Adam, only the biggest pain in our department's collective behind. See, this woman, let's call her Karen, was notorious among the local cops. She'd racked up more tickets than anyone could count, and she always had the same response. Karen, don't you know who I am? Karen, where's your manager? Karen, I'll have your job. Seriously, she was the original Karen before it was even a thing. So, Adam notices that Karen's parked right next to a fire hydrant. Classic Karen move. He sighs, steels himself, and gets out of the car. Adam, good evening, ma'am. Karen, what are you doing here? Adam, just working the beat. Ma'am, you do know you're parked next to a fire hydrant, right? Karen, so. Adam, I'm suggesting you move it before I have to write you a ticket. I'm not in the mood for extra paperwork tonight. Karen, listen, you need to leave my car alone, or I'll have your job. And with that, she storms off into the house, slamming the door behind her. Adam just shakes his head and starts checking the car for any more violations. He's writing up the ticket when suddenly the radio crackles to life. There's a fire alarm going off across the street. Adam looks up, and sure enough, he can see this faint orange glow in the windows of the second floor. He radios it in, and before you know it, the place is swarming with cops and firefighters. The fire's spreading fast. By the time the fire department gets there, the windows on the second floor are blowing out. It's so hot, Adam can feel sweat forming on his face from across the street. Now here's where it gets good. The firefighters need to set up their hoses, but guess what's in the way? Yep, Karen's precious Mercedes. They don't have time to mess around, so they just break the windows and run the hoses right through the car. In the middle of all this chaos, Karen comes bursting out of the house, screaming like a banshee. "Karen, what are you doing? My car is ruined." She actually tries to unhook the hose from the hydrant. It takes 2 officers to hold her back and make her go inside. The rest of the night is a blur of putting out the fire and starting the investigation. By the time Adam gets back to the station, he's dead on his feet. All he wants is to go home and sleep for a week. But of course, that's when his supervisor calls him and Rick over. Turns out, Karen's reported thousands of dollars worth of damage to her car. Not just the broken windows, but water got in and froze solid. The supervisor asks what happened, and they tell her everything. Luckily, it was all caught on the dashcam. The supervisor just laughs and says it's not their problem. Supervisor, well, you had nothing to do with the car getting damaged, so I consider this closed. A few weeks later, they finally caught the firebug. Turns out it was another business owner trying to pull off some insurance fraud. He thought if he set a bunch of other fires, no one would suspect him of burning down his own place. As for Karen, she never did learn her lesson. She went right back to collecting tickets and being a royal pain. But at least she had to pay for the damages to her car, and that ticket Adam gave her. You know, looking back, I almost feel bad for her. Almost. But then I remember all the grief she gave us over the years, and suddenly I don't feel so bad anymore. I guess some people just never change, no matter how many times life tries to teach them a lesson. Story 7. So I was a part of one of my school bands a few years ago, playing the clarinet. We went to a nearby school and did a whole day workshop with their school's band, including playing a few pieces together. While we did this, the conductor would occasionally ask us questions relating to playing the current piece and have certain parts and instruments play bars, while the rest of us listened and the conductor helped them to improve on that part. I can't remember exactly how the exchange goes, but after a while, this roughly gets said, "Conductor, okay, we're going to have the parts who play the main melody in bars so and so play by themselves now. Now, does anyone know which instruments play that part?" Again, workshop. Student raises hand. "Oh, it's the clarinets. They play the melody." Conductor, "Okay, clarinets, get ready to play." Now, here's the thing. For bars so and so, none of the clarinet parts play anything. It's complete silence on our end. The student who said that obviously didn't play the clarinet and didn't sit near us, so they must have not known this, but I did. Guessing what was going to happen, I raised my hand. Me, conductor, the clarinets don't play that. Conductor, just wait, you can ask your question after we play. Me, but conductor, wait until after we play. So I lowered my hand and just decided to just let the conductor see for themselves what I was trying to say and let her count us in. Conductor, and 1, 2, 3, and clarinets, silence. It took a few seconds for people to realize that we weren't going to play anything, and some people started laughing. The conductor realized what I was trying to tell her and quickly moved along. The rest of the day was fun and a good learning experience. Sorry there isn't a big fallout like most stories, but it makes me laugh from time to time, and I hope it made you laugh too.